Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going over this pistol right here. It's a SIG P320, but we're not really going over the pistol itself because I already reviewed it 3 years ago. If you guys want all the details, definitely go check that video out. But we're going to go over the upgrades that SIG has made after their recall due to the pistol not being drop safe. So for those that don't know, there was a bunch of people on the internet demonstrating that this pistol essentially just wasn't drop safe. SIG claims it met some standards, but not all standards, depending on which standard you're going by, I suppose. So SIG issued a recall, and they've made some internal changes to the pistol that we're going to go over here. One that you can see from the outside, the rest are all on the inside. We'll try to show you all of those here in just a second. But when I got it back, I wanted to sort of re-review it because things are different, right? It's a different functioning pistol. So I reached out to Brownells. They sent out some magazines for the gun, so we put a bunch of rounds through it, just under 1,000 rounds. And so definitely big thanks to Brownells. We'll drop a link down below for those mags if anybody's looking for them. They have some of the best prices on them out there. Also added some XS X8 sights, which are great, some night sights there, because we've been shooting in all different conditions, and I picked up a Priority 1 holster for TLR1, if I could speak. So we got all that in. Headed to the range a bunch of times, put a bunch of rounds through it to see how the new upgrades are going to be. So before we get into all that and what I think of it overall, we're going to actually show you what SIG did to change the internal mechanisms here within the pistol. Then at the end, we'll let you know what we think of it overall. If you're just getting your gun back from SIG, basically to check out the difference, we're going to disassemble the pistol. We're going to drop our magazine first, and then we're going to make sure the pistol, of course, is unloaded. This one is. At this point, we'll rotate it down, let the slide go home, and we'll focus on the slide here first. Remove our recoil spring and our barrel. Side note, I'm almost 100% sure they either refinished the barrel for me or gave me a new barrel. I do not know which, but when I sent it in, it had a bunch of wear on it. And this new barrel has almost no wear, even after firing just under 1,000 rounds through it since I've got it back. So I definitely think they either refinished or replaced the barrel. I do not know that, but that is my educated guess. So a few differences here on the slide. The big one here that I'll zoom the camera in for is gonna be a disconnector cutout. So basically, if you kind of follow this trail here, and then you look right in here, you're going to see that there is that cutout that wasn't there originally, and that has to do with the disconnector that's been changed and modified, which we're going to show you here in just a second. But on the slide, that's definitely the big difference you're going to see. The big difference you'll see from the outside is actually going to be the trigger. If you actually look at the trigger itself, it's going to be smaller and lighter than the one that the P320s came with originally. It's 35% lighter, and you can see there on the back they kind of hollowed it out there just to make it a little bit lighter. The reason they did that, for those that don't know, is that it's lighter, so it's going to have less energy, less inertia if it's dropped, less force going to the rear. So it's just an added safety, if you will, to prevent it from dropping, or rather firing when dropped. So that is another external change there that you're going to see. Getting into the trigger mechanism itself, the big difference that you're going to see offhand is this little piece right here. This is our disconnector. That's not present on the early 320s. Now what this does basically is it disconnects the trigger bar from the steer once the slide is in the rearward position. SIG says that this does not actually aid in being more drop safe, if you will. That may be true, it may not be true. However, it's definitely an added safety just having those two pieces not connected when the slide is at the rear. I should also point out that with that disconnector, the actual function of the trigger and the sear are different, right? So on the older ones, basically, if you had your gun apart and you did this action right here, the sear itself would drop down and then pop back up, while the trigger bar, which is of course riding along here, while the trigger bar was engaging the sear. The sear is this piece, for those that don't know. Now with the disconnector is going to do that movement for you, so the sear is not going to move. But on an early 320, this sear here would actually drop down and then come up during the firing cycle. So that's why I say SIG says it doesn't have anything to do with drop safety, but I don't know about that. It might have to do with drop safety because it prevents this piece from popping up when you release the trigger, right? Maybe, maybe not. What do I know? But that's just my 2 cents on it. Another thing that's different here about the trigger housing that you may not notice just visually looking at it, but if you pull it apart, it's easier to see, but just kind of giving you the viewer's or the owner's view as you would get it back. Basically, this safety right here, what this piece is this is preventing, in theory anyway, the sear from going home and letting the striker go forward if it's not pulled, right? So on the older 320s, if you took like a tool like I'm doing here and just kind of pushed up on it, it would go probably up to at least the 45-degree angle. As you guys can see here, it stays down pretty far even now when I push it. Now, what you'll also notice is that when that happens, if I actually pull up on it rather, well, a better way to do it would be to push down here on the sear. So if we push down on the sear, you'll see it go up, and you'll also notice that back here on this piece right here, which is the trigger bar, it moves. And the reason that is that our safety here, which again, it's this little bar, has been redesigned so that now it's in contact the entire time with the trigger bar. It used to be able to move a lot more freely and independently of the trigger bar. Now it moves in conjunction with it. So you'll see there, as I move the sear down, all three pieces move together. So it has to be the same action that would happen if you were to pull the trigger like this, which would release the sear. Another difference that you guys probably already noticed is the sear itself has changed. It has these little steps on it. So the original sear didn't have that at all. It kind of looked like one flat surface. And the reason they did that is for sort of redundancy in terms of the sear being tripped accidentally. So if all of the other safeties that we already talked about, the trigger and everything else, don't prevent that sear from being tripped, it now has a second ledge that it has to overcome. So basically, for those that don't understand, in the slide, this has to go up, this has to be released, striker goes forward, right? All of these things have to happen in conjunction for this piece, which is the striker, to go forward and impact the round, which would be down here in the chamber. So basically, if everything goes wrong and this piece back here, which you guys can see me move, goes up when it's not supposed to, this piece here with the trigger not being pulled to the rear will also be caught here on the back, and it will not be allowed to let the striker go home, mechanically anyway. So that's just a redundant safety built into the sear mechanism itself. One thing the P320 was known for when it first came out was having a very good trigger for a striker fired gun. So with all those changes, you're probably thinking the trigger sucks now. So I'll tell you about that here in just a second, but we'll pull it here on camera first, just so you guys can get an idea of the trigger pull. Now, one thing I didn't mention so far that they changed, which kind of helps with trigger pull, is they use now a lightened striker. It's a striker that they used to use on all their P320 race gun models, their X carries and all that stuff. A little bit lighter weight, again, just for inertia, added safety, but that in theory should help a little bit with the trigger. So let's pull it here on camera with my trigger pull gauge and see what we get. Right there, we're right at 6.5 pounds. That's actually a little bit heavier than what I normally get these days. So let's try it again. Yeah, there you go. Right around 6 pounds, which is about what it's been averaging. So the feel of it, let's go over that real quick. So you're going to have this little bit of slack here and slop like most striker fired triggers have. And then you're going to do a wall, and then you're going to have a little bit of mush, and then the brake is actually pretty clean. The reset itself, still very tactile, still very audible. And again, you're going to have this play, a little bit of mush right here, and then a brake. In the reset, it's a little bit longer than it used to be for sure. So the trigger now, like you guys saw, is breaking right around 6 pounds. When I first got this back from the upgrade, it was right around 7 pounds, but with all the rounds we put through it since, it's kind of lightened up a little bit. When I did my original review of this thing was breaking right at 5 pounds, so it is a little bit heavier. That said, for a striker fired gun, the trigger is still better than most. Like, I would take this over like a Gen 1 through 4 Glock, for instance. I still think it's a little bit crisper right here where it breaks, a little bit more predictable. There's almost no over travel, which I really like as well. It just helps you get back on that trigger quickly. Resets a little bit longer as well. So pros and cons, I suppose, there, but it's not atrocious. The gun is definitely very shootable still. So before I sent the pistol in, this thing never had a single malfunction with any round we put through it. So that certainly is a good thing. Once we got it back, I was anxious to kind of see how that would work out, especially with the barrel, like I said, either being refinished or replaced. I'm not sure what SIG did, but either way, with that barrel, I was a little bit concerned. I didn't know if they changed the geometry or anything like that, especially with the MH modular handgun trials and everything happening after I did my original review. I didn't know if they changed it to conform with that. I have no idea. If you guys know down below, feel free to post. But anyway, so looking at that, I was kind of like, I wonder how reliable it'll be. But again, put just under 1,000 rounds through it, all different kinds, mostly Minuteman munitions, and we've had a grand total 0 malfunctions still to this day. So the pistol before the recall and after the recall, 100% reliable. So you simply can't be mad about that. So that is a good thing. The trigger changed in the way that we talked about. Again, I do not think it's a bad trigger to this day. It's not as like nice and easy to pull as it used to be. That said, there's a million aftermarket trigger companies out there that are making triggers components for this pistol if you guys want to go that route. Me personally, I think the pistol is perfectly shootable as is. I would not change it. I will not change it going forward. So I'm happy with that. Now, just the pistol overall, what do I think of it? Again, everything happening 3 years afterwards since the original review. I like it. The downside of it, of course, is that it's very top heavy. That's for sure. It has a high bore axis. I'm kind of a bore axis snob, as people who watch this channel know. That's definitely a downside. The ambi controls here are good. The grip texturing is good. The fact that you can swap grips in frames out rather is very good. For those that don't know, this is a modular pistol, so the pistol is actually the chassis that rides on the inside. You can swap your grips and frames out. This is a medium full-size frame, but you could take this exact pistol, buy a compact frame, and put the inside components that we just showed you into that frame, and it would work. So it's modular in that regard. I do think that's a cool concept for sure. Easy to take down, maintenance is great. The finish is holding up really well. There's only a couple spots that really show wear, so their nitron finish, as they call it, is doing really well. Price point wise, these are still good. I just checked over in Brownells right before making this video. These things were going for $4.99. Again, that's a pretty decent price in today's market, considering, you look around at your competition, your Glocks are going to be a little bit more than that. Your M&Ps, same price, maybe a little bit cheaper. Your CZ-P10s, same price, maybe a little bit cheaper. But those are really kind of like the big competitors. The FN509 is going to be a little bit more expensive, generally speaking. But compared to, I'm just going to throw out every striker-fired polymer gun now, but the Beretta APX as well is going to be similarly priced. So price point-wise, it's really, again, still very competitive. Now the huge news that's happened, of course, after I did the original review is that SIG, this base pistol was chosen for the MHS program for the Army, and now the Air Force has adopted some as well. And that they definitely had some teething issues there. If you guys read the reports over at Fort Campbell, they had some serious problems with those pistols functioning with standard ammunition. Now, from everything I've read, they've fixed that. So the teething issues are still out there, but for the civilian models, they seem good to go. A lot of my viewers, of course, post whenever I post on social media about theirs. All the reports I'm hearing is that function's good, accuracy is good, all of that stuff. So at this point, it seems like SIG has fixed the bugs on this particular pistol. There are other models, we shall see going forward with reviews on the channel, but all in all, seems like a good gun. It points naturally. It's been 100% reliable. Again, that is the #1 priority for me. So I really do like that. The availability of aftermarket parts for it is awesome, and the Army's adoption of it is just going to make that more available, simply because there's going to be more of them out there. The access sights are great, holster's great, mags are great, all that stuff. Really, I think it's a good pistol. Obviously, I would wish that it didn't have the recall, but many companies have had recalls, of course. Many of you guys know, like Gen 1 Glocks were all recalled, all that stuff. So it's not uncommon in the industry, but hopefully SIG stops making those types of mistakes going forward, because they have a great reputation. I want to see them keep that reputation, but between this pistol and the P365, there's definitely been some serious issues on the initial release, and hopefully they get their act together and fix that. So as of this video right now, I'm currently filming my P365. It's still ongoing, the testing, so stay tuned for that. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions about the upgrades, the pistol, anything like that, you can always post down below in the comments section. As always, you can post over at my Facebook page as well. That's generally speaking the best way to get in touch with me if you really need an answer. But thanks for watching as always. If you guys are new here and do not subscribe to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. And I hope to see all of you in the next video.